Hi, everyone. Here's a quick practice on statistical summary for lecture 3, okay? Yeah, so I encourage you to look at this text file, which is on lecture 3 R code. So you can just copy and paste this code in R and then use it for practice. But usually I encourage you to copy it one after the other, or if possible, type it to learn along. Okay, so quickly, once you have copy and paste, we are actually going to make use of an inbuilt data set, okay? So the inbuilt data set we are going to use is the empty cars, okay? Yeah, but however, you can import your own data and then practice with variables within the data set, okay? So we are going to load the data, which is using, once you type in data and then you call it the name of the data set, you are able to actually get the data. So basically it was data, then you say that mcat. So okay, so here we have it. So now you can just run that line. So if again that you highlight it and then run the code, or you can just put the cursor and then run the code. So now the data is active for us to use, and then you can see that if you look at the environment section of the RStudio, you can see we now have the data ready, which has 32 observation and 11 variables. Okay, so we might want to know the names of the data, so we can put the cursor there and then run. So here we have the names of the different variables within the data, which are the 11 variables. So the names give you the names of the variables. And then we might want to see the first 6 observation of the data set, perhaps, which will give us an idea of the type of variables we have, whether categorical variables or maybe nominal, continuous variables, quantitative variables. So you might want to know the first 6 observations. So here are the first 6 observations in which we have in the data set, okay? All right, so now once we have this, there are different statistical summaries we can actually have, but then let us go through one after the other, some examples of the statistical summary. So for instance, we might want to find the mean of this variable, MPG, okay? So once you type in mean, and then you type the data with $MPG, okay? So basically what this one is doing is we have, let me type, so you have the mean, and then you have empty cars. So once you bring the $, we want to find the mean of what? MPG, okay? Then you can introduce this one, which allow you to actually take care of missing values within the data set. So if there's a missing value in the data set, NA.RM means exclude every missing information, okay? And then that actually allow you to perform the mean without actually being affected by any missing information within the data, okay? All right, so basically, so here we can just go ahead and then find the mean as we have typed. So the mean of this. So we have it, but in the same way over here, we can highlight it and then run the mean, and it's the same mean we're actually going to have, right? Yeah, so, and then also we can go ahead. So there are 2 ways of actually trying to call the variables, okay? So we could have basically used attach, okay? We can just attach the data, which is empty cars. Once we attach the data, what then it means is that we can go ahead and then call the variables without making use of the $, okay? But even with the attach, you can still make use of the $, okay? So now the median, so we can use the median function to calculate the median of MPG from the empty cars data. So this code here actually gives us the median. So the median, the data with the $ MPG, that gives you the variable MPG, and then we can run. We don't want any missing information, okay? Yeah, so we can now run. So the median is what? 19.2, okay? But we could have simply said that, okay, give me the median of MPG, and then R will still give us the median. Why? Because now we already attached the data. So now the R is able to recognize every variable within the data without having to retype the data and use the $ to call the variable, okay? All right. So we can also use SD function to find the standard deviation. So SD in parentheses, again, so we can use the SD in a parenthesis, in a parenthesis, MP, okay, and then that gives us what? The standard deviation. So the standard deviation is what? 6.026, okay? Yeah, and then we can also find the variance, okay? So again, we can find the variance using the variance function, which is var of what? MPG. And then we can just run it. Again, remember, I'm using MPG without, if you run the same line, it's going to give you the same thing, okay? Which is what I run it. But this line, I'm using MPG without writing this whole stuff, which is the data, and then with the $MPG again, because I have already attached the data. Hence, R is able to recognize every variable within the data without me using the $ to call the variable from the data, okay? Now let's go ahead and just run. So we can use the mean function to find the mean of MPG. And again, MPG is a continuous variable, or it's a continuous variable, which is a quantitative variable. So it's easy to actually find the mean, which is the minimum variable within the data. Okay, so MPG. Okay, now I run, which is 10.4. So we can also find the maximum variable. So I'll go ahead and then run finding the maximum variable. And then we can, which is 33.9. So that's the maximum variable of MPG. And then we have the range. So the range gives you the minimum variable and then the maximum variable, okay? So we can actually use the range function. So range in the parentheses MPG would give us the minimum and the maximum variable, which of course we have here. We find the minimum variable. The minimum variable was 10.4. The maximum variable was at 33.9. So the minimum and the maximum variable, which is the range, give us what? Give us both of them. Then we can find the quartiles, okay? So if you use the function quartile of MPG, that gives you the first, second, third, and then other quartile. So we have the first quartile. So we have the first quartile, we have the second quartile, which is the median, we have the third quartile, which is the and then we have the third quartile, and then we have the 100th quartile, okay, and then the zero, that which is the most minimum number. So this is the minimum number, it is the 0 percentile, and the maximum number is the what? Is the 100th percentile, okay. But this one gives us the first quartile, which is the 25th percentile, the second quartile, which is the median, and then the third quartile, which is the 75th percentile of the data, okay. And then also, there are also different packages you can actually use to generate the summary, the statistical summary of your data set, okay? And especially if you want to do that by group, okay? If you want to find, let's say, the MPG by the different cylinders within the data, okay? Yeah, so this particular variable here, it's a nominal variable or categorical variable. So assuming we are interested in finding the mean, the median, and the standard deviation for every category of this particular variable, then we can actually make use of the dplyr package, okay? If you haven't installed it, first of all, you can actually go ahead and then install. Usually it comes along with a tidyverse, but you can just install it by itself. So you can just type install packages, and then you say dplyr. Okay. Yeah, so it basically gives you, you can just tap on it and then you install. I have already installed, but once you have installed, you have to activate or load that package. Okay. Once you have loaded that package, I can actually go ahead and load it. Once the package have been loaded, now we have the data, which is the mcars. Remember, the data is called the mtcars. And then you are going to use the percentage sign with the greater than sign and then the percentage sign. So now this one is actually going into the data set, which is the empty cards. And then you are now telling it, so the next line of the code is now, you want it to group it by the categories within the cylinders, which is the CYL, okay? And then now you go to the, for each of the categories, you actually also use, again, you bring the percentage, the greater than sign, and then the percentage sign. And then now you use what is called the summarize function, okay? So the summarize function, now what do you want to summarize? You want it to summarize, find the mean of MPG, okay? We could have just, this one is just you naming it anyhow, but we could have just named it by any way you actually wanted, okay? So we say mean of what? MPG, okay? That give is equals to the mean of MPG. And then we are giving another function name, which is called the median of MPG, which is equals to the median of MPG, which is the function of median. And then the SD of MPG, underscore MPG, give us the what? SD, standard deviation of MPG, okay? And they are all found in this function, which is called the summarize function, okay? So again, the data, this right here goes into the data. This right, they'll go into the data, and then now go and group the data by the number of cylinder, and then now go ahead and do the calculation of finding the summaries, which we want to find the summaries of the mean, the median, and then the standard deviation. So let's go ahead and then you can highlight everything and then you can run it. Okay, so now we have, these are the number of cylinders. So we have 4, 6, and then 8 cylinders. So for the 4 cylinders, the mean is 26.7, the standard deviation is 26, and then, sorry, the median is 26, and the standard deviation is 4.51. For 6 cylinders, we have 19.7, 19.7 also as the median, and then 1.45 as the standard deviation. Now remember that whenever the median is equals to the standard, the mean is equals to the median, then that data can be said to be normally distributed, okay? So perhaps for, if you want to find the distribution of only 6 cylinders, then we anticipate that that distribution will be normally distributed because they have the same mean and standard deviation. That's just by the way. And then also you have, when it is 8 cylinders, you have the mean, the median, and then also the standard deviation. Okay, so that's how to use the dplyr package to actually generate the mean. And then of course you can even include more function. We could have actually go ahead and maybe include even the quartile. So let's say we can say qt underscore, let's say mpg. Okay, then we could have actually say it's equals to the what? The quartile. Okay, so we could have actually say it's equals to the quantiles. Yeah. Okay, the quantiles of what? mpg. Okay, you can include more function in this summarize function. Okay, and then we could have, you can just put the cursor there and then we could have just run it. And again, you see we have, I mean, different information which is actually giving us here. Okay, all right, so that's just by it. And then also another package in which you can use is the psych package. Okay, so again, first of all, you have to install the psych package. And once you have actually installed the psych package, the next thing is for you to be able to load the psych package. Once you have loaded the psych package, the function we are actually going to use for the psych package from the psych package is called the describe. So describe the data. That will give us the statistical summary in a comprehensive way for every variable within the data, okay? So let us go ahead and run describe. So now we have, these are all the variables we have in the data. So the first column here gives us the variables we have in the data, okay? And for each of those variables, we are able to actually know the number of observation, which give us 32 observation for each of the variables. This is just the variables numbers, okay? 1, 2, 3, up to 11, which means we have 11 variables. So we have the mean, standard deviation, the median, the trim mean. We have the minimum, the maximum, we have the range, we have the skew, we have the ketosis, we have the standard error. And so this actually giving you a broad range of statistical summary. And then you also have a function which is called the scheme function, okay? Again, you also, first of all, have to install this package, and then you actually load the package, okay? So you can go ahead and load the package. While the package is loaded, we are actually using the function called scheme. Scheme what? Scheme the data, which is also going to give us in a very customizable way the summary statistics of the data, okay? So let us go ahead and run that line. Okay, so now for each of the 11 variables in the data set, it tells us how many missing information do we have, or missing values do we have in that data. And it says we have 0 for each of those variables. It means there are no missing values in any of the variables, right? And then we are able to actually go ahead and get the mean, the standard deviation for each of the variables, the percentile, which is the 0th percentile, in other words, the minimum values, the 25th percentile, the median, or the 50th percentile, which is the 75th percentile, which is the third quartile, right? And then the 100th percentile, which is the maximum value. And that is for each of these variables. Now, what you should actually notice is the fact that you only perform this statistical summary for continuous variable, right? But anyway, regardless, this data, it actually was able to, it just give it to us for every variable in the data set. But now, if you want to actually focus on only the continuous variable, you could have just, specified for the data to actually focus on only those variables, okay? Yeah, so let us look at, so perhaps we could have actually said that, okay, I don't want you to give me the statistical summary for every information in the data set because not all the variables are continuous. But I want you to give me the statistical summaries for these columns. So we use the concatenate function, which is the C function, and then we said, okay, give me MPG is continuous, so MPG is continuous. And then also we have the this is also continuous variable, and then maybe other additional variables. Okay, so let us look at just for the two. Okay, so now there's actually error in which we actually had. So now this error is telling you that, okay, I know you actually want to find the statistical summary for this particular columns, but however, in the scheme function, it doesn't actually allow you to select columns, okay? So which means it's not every function that you can actually do that, okay? So the scheme function just straight away give you the statistical summary for every variable within the data set, okay? So before you use the scheme function, you have to make sure that the variables you have in the data set are all continuous to be able to use this scheme function, okay? And then you also have the histogram. So again, the histograms are used for continuous variables. So now we have each histogram for each of the variables within the data, okay? Yeah, and then again, those variables that are nominal or qualitative variables, it makes no sense actually to display its histogram. But regardless, this actually gives us a comprehensive statistical summary, including the histogram, okay, and in a very customizable way. Then also, you can actually use the scheme to also group by, okay? So in order to use the scheme to group by, again, you use the empty cast, which is the data, and then you use the $sign, the greater than sign, the percentage greater than sign percentage again. Now this is actually going into the data set. And then you are now telling the data, okay, group the data by, group that summary by the type of number of cylinders, okay? And then what do you want to use? We want to use the function which is called the scheme function, okay? All right, so we can go ahead and then run it. Now, once we have run, what do we see? So now we have this, that you have for each of the variables or the other variables, we are able to get statistical summary for each category of the number of cylinders. So for instance, for MPG, when we have 4 cylinders, when we have 6 cylinders, when we have 8 cylinders. These are the statistical summary, which is the mean, the standard deviation, the minimum, the first quarter, the second quarter, third quarter, the maximum, and then also the histogram for when we have 4 cylinders. When we have 6 cylinders, when we have 7 cylinders for the MPG, now it is displaying a statistical summary along with what the histogram. And then also it also look at this, okay? This variable is also looking at, okay, when we have 4, 6, and then 8 cylinders for each of that variable, okay? So now it is displaying the statistical summary for this, okay, for each of the cylinders. So when we have 4 cylinders, we have 6, we have 8 cylinders, this is the summary statistics for what this, okay? And then it also continue, okay? So this is how you can actually use the scheme function to also generate statistical summary by grouping the summaries by grouping them into categories, okay, when you have a categorical variable. Then also, you also have another function which is called the fbasic function. Again, install it and then you load it. Once you have loaded that function, once the function has been loaded, you can use the basic statistics, okay? And the basic statistics, once you run it, it actually gives us the basic statistics for all the variables. So this time, it is actually giving us each of the variables as a column. And then the row is giving the basic statistics along with. So you have how many number of observation, how many missing data, which is NAs, minimum, maximum, which is first quarter, third quarter, the mean, the median, the sum, the standard error, the the lower confidence interval, the upper confidence interval of the mean, the variance, the standard deviation, the skewness, the ketosis, and it is giving you for each of the variables we have in the data. Okay, and again, before you use this, make sure the variables you are actually dealing with are what? Continuous variables. So it makes sense to generate for MPG, which is continuous. The disp is also a continuous variable. The HP is also a continuous variable. Okay, all right. So basically, these are different ways in which you can actually find a statistical summary when you are given a particular data. Okay, I hope this is helpful and I hope you come to actually understand. I'll see you in another lecture.